Well, hello. It's been a long time, I know. We have been, for the last 2 weeks, taking different trips and doing a bunch of traveling. Most recently, we just got back last night from Sierra Vista, Arizona, where, by the way, it was 90 degrees there, top temperature 91. And here in Idaho, it was 101, 104. So wasn't that great here in Idaho? But being gone for a couple weeks, I come back to a jungle. Seriously, an entire jungle. So I'm going to have to do a whole lot of maintenance here in the polytunnel, the hoop house, where all of my tomato plants are just completely out of control. So we're going to be trimming a bunch of these and making sure that everything is back to normal. And probably this weekend we're going to be taking the shade cloth off because it's supposed to drop back into the lower 90s and stay that way for a little while and then drop into the higher 80s. And that is absolutely perfect for being able to take the shade cloth off because we don't need that protection anymore for the plants inside the hoop house. So that's what we're going to be doing. And so let's get started. Are you ready? Okay. And we're done. See how quick and easy that was? It was almost instantaneous, right? Okay, just kidding. Here's the footage of actually doing it. All right, that was just a joke. We're going to show you how I actually trim the tomato plants. That's basically, we keep one main stem. We let the stem grow up. The stems are growing on these strings right here. I wrap the plant around the string and let it climb. And then any excess or additional foliage gets cut off completely. And that way we have airflow and the plants can get the light that they need in order to continue growing adequately and producing fruit. So the tomato plants do have quite a bit of fruit on them right now. These are all of my paste tomato plants. So I'm going to be plucking all of those off of the plants, putting them in my hod and taking them in and making sauce. And then I'll be canning that sauce so I can preserve it throughout the year. So let me show you how I trim the plants. So like I said, I trim off all of the excess foliage off of the plant. Anything that is not the main stem comes off completely. Even if it has blossoms on it, it comes off. The main stem will have enough, it will produce enough. And in the hoop house, sorry, Jared's calling from Taiwan, so I'm going to have to let you go for a minute. All right. Well, Jared's doing really good over there in Taiwan. Of course, Mom is scared for him because of the stuff that's going on in Taiwan, but not much I can do from here. So take it one day at a time and just don't worry about the things you can't change and have the strength to change the things that you can. All right, this I'm going to change. So like I said, I keep the main stem and I cut everything else off, all the excess branches. Like this here is a huge branch and off it goes. I will lose some blossoms in doing this, but as long as I keep the main stem, I'm going to be able to continue getting fruit off of it. So I'll just continue cutting away. I do have beans wrapped around here too. Those were self-sown. They kind of just were volunteers in the garden, which is fine. I'm good with that. Like this right over here, this is all beans. I'm going to save the seeds from this particular bean and plant again next year. So, all right, time to get to work. So I left tomato plant number 1 as it was, so that I can kind of show you how we trim the tomato plants up and keep the main branches just one stem, one main stem, and cut all of the other branches off. The ones that are not producing, the suckers, all of those go. One stem, and it's supposed to be over here, but as you can see, it's way over here. So I have a couple of them here, one that's not doing so well and the one that's doing really good. So we're gonna trim this up, paste it up, and let me show you kind of how we do this and get those branches off of there. So being that it's completely a bush, can't see a whole lot, I will find something that's not actually, I'm just going to cut that. So we do have beans growing on here. The beans were self-sown, so we're just kind of leaving those in place just because. Anyway, so you find a branch. This one's already been cut off, it looks like. So it either had been broke, which it kind of looks like it's been broke, and you find these leaves here, this branch that has nothing on it. In between that leaf is the main stem, but I'm going to cut just this leaf structure off. So all of these leaves are not going to produce anything. They're just taking energy to grow. So we're going to remove that so that the plant can produce more tomatoes by using the energy for that instead of the foliage. So I keep doing that as I go through. I find another branch here that doesn't have any fruit growing on it. It's just leaf structure, and I cut it. And as you can see, it's already looking easier to maintain and manage because there's less leaf structure all over the place. And I continue doing that until I get a nice clean plant that I can then manage better. So all of the leaves come off. This big branch, I'm going to wrap around this little piece, cut another branch off here that doesn't have anything growing, again over here, and you can see this is a, oops, I just broke a sucker, and that's fine. This branch here has a blossom on it, so I'm going to leave this branch and I'm going to move up a little bit higher, and I'm going to cut that branch. This one has a blossom on it, so I'm going to leave that, except I'm going to cut past it. So I'm leaving the blossom, we're cutting everything else off. And then this branch can wrap around that string right there. And then again, coming down, because sometimes it's easier going up to down, sometimes it's easier going down to up. It depends on the plants, depends on where it's at. And how far out of control it is. This is really out of control. So I kind of started at the top, and I'm going to start moving down, and I'm going to cut all of the little branches off that don't have any foliage or any fruit. So now that I've left a few branches on top, I can move down and cut all of this off here. Cleaning up all of the excess so that the plant can focus more on producing fruit instead of the foliage. I think I want my other cutters. So I use these little clips here. They bend and they clip onto the string and clip around the tomato plant stem. And yes, I know it's plastic. It's not ideal. Just broke another one. But it's what I have and it's what I'm using. So I found some branches, and I'm going to have to cut the green beans because they are completely wrapped around this tomato plant. So we have several branches coming off of this plant and a whole lot of blossoms, so I'm really excited about that. But we need to maintain it a little bit better. All right, so this branch here comes off. Whole lot of branches. Some of the suckers come off, some of them do not, because this plant here looks like it's had a really rough start. So the main stem is not doing as well as it could. So leaving a couple suckers on to take up the slack is not a bad thing. Okay, so as you can see, the plant is already thinned out quite a bit. I know it's a little bit difficult to tell the difference now because of the beans that are wrapped around it. All of these leaves here, these are beans. So it might look a little confusing right now with the amount of foliage that's on here, but not all of that is tomato. Some of that is the beans that I just let grow. So some of it's beans, some of it's tomatoes. So so there's a lot going on right here, but you can see it's much thinner. There's a couple offshoots on this because it did have a hard time getting started this spring. I left some of the suckers on. They do have blossoms and it looks like they're going to be producing. So I wanted to get more fruit for this year because of the hard start that we had at the beginning of the season. The last couple of years have been strange springs, so it got cold way past the last frost date, which has been, I guess, the thing that's been going on in the last couple of years all over the place. I've heard from friends that are living in Missouri that had the same problem, so it's obviously something that's happening. So we're looking at some damage from the frost early on, but seems to be growing okay. So we're going to let some of the suckers grow because they do have blossoms on them. It's not a huge plant. It doesn't even go very tall. Some of the higher leaves are about right there. Some of the taller leaves are about right here, so I can still reach them from ground level. And so we're just going to let them continue growing as they are. So the process is actually really, really simple. Any branches that are not producing fruit can go away, except for the top portion. So as you can see, as it goes up a little bit, the single stem goes up. I leave some of the leaf structure on the top so that it can still photosynthesize. Without photosynthesis, you're not going to be producing fruit. It has been extremely hot. There's been more heat than what normally is during the growing season here in Idaho. We have had quite an intense summer. So my tomatoes have been struggling quite a bit. There was a lot of tomatoes on here when I left. Of course, my farm helper is able to pick whatever she wants. Her family gets to take it home with them. So a lot of the fruit that was on the tomato plants, it has been harvested. there are still quite a bit growing, and I see that there's more blossoms starting on a lot of the plants. So I'm going to get another round of harvest on all of them before the end of the season. Now, growing in the hoop house, I'm able to extend that growing season all the way into October. Last year, out in the weather, I was able to get tomatoes all the way into November. So I'm hoping, even though it's supposed to be a really, really intense, harsh winter this year, I'm hoping that the hoop house is going to protect them enough that I can get a whole new harvest, a whole bunch of tomatoes from these plants, as well as the peppers. I didn't show you the peppers earlier, but the peppers, of course, they've been picked, so there's not a lot growing on them right now. And I'm seeing aphids. I'm hoping that the aphid season's almost over. I did cut some branches off that had some green tomatoes. Basically what I'll do is fry them up and make some dinner out of those. So they're not going to go to waste. I'm still going to be able to use them. But in the meantime, I am waiting for another round of tomatoes to start growing. And that way we can get a whole new harvest out of them. So this is a much cleaner, much easier way to handle tomatoes. I don't have to worry about trying to find the tomatoes. I don't have to worry about the huge space that the tomatoes can take up when I do it this way. Now you can see over here, those are my cherry tomatoes and my pear tomatoes. Those are determinants, so those ones are just growing as they are, because if I cut the branches off, I'm not going to get to the harvest. It's not going to continue producing like these ones do. So I'm leaving those ones. That's why they're in the center, and so they can take up more space. Next year, I'm probably going to move them outdoors just because it's much easier. And those ones, once they're done producing, they're done. So those ones I didn't trim up. I do need to harvest because I'm seeing quite a bit of cherry tomatoes on there. I guess my farm helper didn't see those, so I actually get some tomatoes. But those ones stay as is. A lot of them have been hooked up a little bit high, but then have been folding over and falling over. So I'm probably going to support those up a little bit better and get them a little bit more height. That way they're not as bushy, but those ones just kind of stay bushy. But delish. So as you can see, the entire row of tomatoes, you can see through them. The wind's going to come through, the sun's going to come through. We are taking the shade down probably this weekend, because it is supposed to start cooling down as of tomorrow. But the farm helper's coming out this weekend, and we're going to take the shade cloth down, which is going to open everything up and allow more sunlight, which means that these are going to hit an all-time high in growing as soon as we take the shade cloth down, because they're going to be exposed to full sun, lower temperatures but full sun for a while, until we put the plastic up in October before the first frost date. So that's the tomatoes. Didn't take a lot of time, but it definitely, you need to stay up on it, otherwise it turns into a forest. And then it takes a little bit longer. So a little bit each week, and it's easy maintaining. But this, I think, looks better than a whole forest. So that's it for today. We'll see you again next time, and in the meantime, happy gardening. Bye.